I know it can be intimidating to start a garden from scratch, so I'm gonna break it down for you. I'm gonna show you how to build an in-ground bed, show you how to test the soil, prep the soil and prepare it for planting, and then we'll put in a salsa garden and care for that garden, including building some vertical structures to help support and trellis up those vining crops like tomatoes. So let's get to it. Planting in an in-ground bed has a lot of advantages over planting in a raised bed. It's often a lot cheaper. You don't have to buy as much soil or amendments because you're just working with the soil you already have. It also tends to hold a little bit more water because it's connected to the ground below, so it doesn't dry out as quickly. And you just have a lot more space. You can grow some larger crops like watermelons or squash, pumpkins, and things like that. When you're choosing the location to build your in-ground bed, you really want to choose a spot that gets 6 to 8 hours or more of full sun to give your plants the best chance at growth. Once you determine where your bed's going to be, it's time to run a soil test to see if the soil's healthy and has enough nutrients. So I'll show you exactly how to do that. To get started, we need to find out what kind of soil we have. Is it heavy in clay? Is it heavy in sand? Is it more silty? I'm going to show you exactly how to do that using just a mason jar and a trowel. The first thing we need to do is just prepare the workspace. So let's get these wood chips out of the way because we don't want those to impact our soil test. So next I'm going to take my mason jar and fill it up about halfway. We want to get in here and dig down a good amount, maybe 4 to 6 inches minimum. We'll just pop that into our mason jar. And we want to take what we call a representative sample. So not just from one area, we want to take at least 3. And finally, we just got to fill this up with water. So we'll just give it a nice shake. I know this looks like a jar of mud right now, and it is, but if you wait a couple hours, or even if you let it sit overnight, all the different soil particles will separate out, and it'll reveal a lot about what we're working with in this soil right here. Soil in our mason jar test has had a chance to settle. I want to show you how to analyze this test and make sense of it. We have our soil line right here. Everything above this is just muddy water and some really light particles. We don't have to worry about that. So we're really looking at everything below this line here. What you're doing is you're allowing the particles to separate themselves out. The largest ones, your sand particles, will be at the bottom. The middle will have some silt, medium-sized particles, and then the top will be your very fine clay particles. Now, in a perfect world, you would have about 1/3 of each, which is called a loamy soil. It's kind of the ultimate. It's the holy grail of soil, but most of us don't start there. And so what this test does is it allows you to troubleshoot and see where you're off from the ideal and then make those corrections in your garden. My jar is heavy in clay, and I know that because this bottom layer is all uniform and I don't see any large particles. While having some clay in your soil is necessary, having too much can be bad for a couple different reasons. Number one, if it's compacted, the roots have nowhere to go. It's almost like they're growing in a container. Number two, it holds on to so much moisture that your roots can actually drown underground. So now that we know what our soil is composed of, the only step left is to fix the problem. The first step is to loosen it up. Now, I went down to the home center and rented a rototiller, which can seem intimidating, but it's going to make the job a whole lot easier. Just start the machine up and let it run over the area you're trying to prepare. No need to push it down. Let the machine do the work and keep on going until you've tilled up about 6 to 12 inches worth of soil. Now that we've loosened the soil, we're ready to add some organic matter back into it. And there's really no better way to do that than with a healthy dose of compost. Compost provides nutrients that your plants need, and it also improves the overall quality of the soil that you're working in. Now, if you don't have a compost bin set up at home yet, it's no problem. You can go to the garden center, grab some bags, and add it directly to the top of your bed. I like to add 1/3 to 1/2 as much as I just tilled up as far as soil volume. So I tilled up maybe 6 cubic feet. I'll put 2 or 3 cubic feet of compost in, which works out to 2 or 3 bags. One final thing I like to add to any bed when I'm starting it off is a good dose of an organic granular fertilizer. It's a fantastic way to add even more nutrients to your soil to feed your plants. About 1 1/3 cups per 5 foot of row is a good amount. I have a little bit longer than that, so I just rounded up to 2 cups. We just used the tiller to break up the soil, but another fantastic use is to mix our soil ingredients together so everything is blended nice and even. What I like to do at the very end is put some of the highest quality soil that you just get at the garden center in right on the top, because that's where our plant's roots are really going to be in the beginning of their life. And all we have to do now is pretty it up a little bit by raking it over and forming up our bed. Our top soil mix is a pre-prepared bagged mix, and I've added about 3 cubic feet to my bed to build it up 3 or 4 inches above the ground. We've got a nice amount of soil both above and below the ground, which will allow it to warm up earlier in the day and cool down slower at night. The only thing left to do is just water it in, and then it's ready for some plants.
Your goal is to get the soil wet to at least 6 inches or so you can really start working with it.
Next up, let's walk through how to plant your seeds as I plant my seeds for my new salsa garden. Your first in-ground bed is prepared. It's time to plant it up with some vegetables. And when you think of vegetables, a lot of times you think salads, salads, salads. But a vegetable garden can be a lot more exciting than that. We're gonna put a salsa garden in this new bed. What we're gonna do is plant up the 3 classic salsa garden plants: tomatoes, peppers, and onions. I'm gonna start with the tomatoes. Tomatoes and peppers are roughly 12 inches apart. When you're considering plant spacing, it's about both above and below the soil. Below, don't place those plants too close together because the roots are then competing for water, oxygen, and nutrients. Above the soil, the foliage can start to block light from other plants or just be too close together and become a breeding ground for both pests and disease. So I'm planting a variety of tomatoes because I want variety coming out of the garden as well. You can get tomatoes that look very classic, like this Roma right here, but if you get a little adventurous, this is a beautiful heirloom tomato. It's got some blemishes on it, but the flavor is absolutely insane. I like to tease these roots open just slightly so they're ready to spread out. I've chosen some jalapenos because that is a classic salsa pepper. And peppers, same spacing, about 12 inches, 18 if you want to be generous. I didn't bury it deep, I just buried it right up on that soil line. A single plant can produce dozens and dozens of them. And in fact, if you're in a zone that has a warm climate, you can grow this year after year. You don't have to rip it out. We'll move on down to onions. I really like a green onion. I know it might not be a traditional salsa ingredient, but I really like it, so it's gonna go in my salsa. We're gonna space this about 4 inches apart. These guys don't really have a maturity date like our tomatoes and our peppers, and you can just harvest them as you need. Then we'll move on to bulbing onions. We'll put them in pretty densely because they grow compact. That's their final size, and we can probably fit 1, 2, 12 right there without interfering with each other. So our tomatoes are in, our peppers are in, and our onions are in. Now we're gonna go absolutely wild with a lot of spice in the habanero. We're gonna plant these in about a foot apart from each other, and we finish this bed off. As with all gardens, once you've planted it in, it's time to water it in. And I don't want to spray all over the top. We just want to give them a nice, healthy drink right at the base. After all, it's really the roots that need the water, not so much the entire top of the plant. And that helps prevent disease. About 10 seconds per plant will do, or until the water permeates the soil, about 4 to 6 inches deep. Our salsa garden is good to go, and we should start getting some early harvests out of here in 50, 60 days or so. Now that we've worked in our soil, created our bed, and we've planted out our in-ground salsa garden, we need to talk about supporting these plants. Larger plants want a little bit of help growing vertically. That's gonna maximize our space. It's also gonna maximize the health of the plants. With just a few cheap bamboo stakes and some twine, I'll show you exactly how you can create a custom support structure for your peppers, your tomatoes, really any plant that needs a little bit of help growing up vertically. Let's get our first bamboo trellis set up. The benefit really of a bamboo is it's very strong, but it's very lightweight and it's relatively straight. First thing, grab your twine, make a loop, make another loop, put one loop behind the other, put it on the end that you want to attach, and pull it tight. So now we have just a little anchor point. Now this is the easiest part. You just line up your bamboo stakes, and then you're just gonna weave over, under, over, under. And we wanna repeat this about 4 or 5 times. Now what we wanna do is 3 loops in between each pole, vertically. 1, 2, 3. It tightens down that pattern that we just did. This really is what's adding that rigidity to the structure. There we go. Now we're going to tie it off, cinch that down. We'll cut our line. And now we have a 4-pole bamboo trellis that's going to be absolutely perfect for those peppers that we put into our salsa garden. Now we're going to make another one. We've tied up 2 trellises, perfect for these peppers. First, we have our jalapenos, which are right here. We just stretch out our trellis close to the stem, but not right next to the stem because you don't want to damage the sensitive roots. Lightly depress it 4 or 5 inches or so. And as the jalapenos grow up, you can take a little bit of that twine, wrap it around, and lightly and loosely secure them. Next one, the habaneros. Just depress it as evenly as we can. There we go. In this chapter, you've learned how to test your soil and turn it into a fertile in-ground bed, which we put in some beautiful salsa ingredients and then supported those ingredients with vertical structures like trellises. So in about a month or so, you're gonna have a nice fresh salsa coming out of this garden. So enjoy it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.